everyone, my name is Vina, aka Miss WOC Reader, and welcome back to my channel. So today, I just wanted to do a quick video about why reading diversely isn't just enough. And I already know the people who need to hear this the most aren't going to stop in and watch this video. If they do watch, sometimes stuff just goes over people's head because they are convinced that they are correct. And not everybody's open to listening, and that's just okay. But it's getting weird on here because I find that sometimes, especially on BookTube, people hyper focus on pushing diversity, but they ain't really thinking about the communities that they are reading these diverse books about. So when you make a list of BIPOC authors, is it really a list of BIPOC authors if you left out the bi part and just only did other POC? Is that not the whole purpose of using the term BIPOC, to remember Black and Indigenous authors? Because I saw that happen recently and it raised my eyebrow a little bit because I'm like, but where was the bi part? And I've seen people recently talk over the same marginalized communities that they claim to be defending. And you know me, I really don't like using the term marginalized because I feel that in of itself puts people in a box. Just like I side-eye the way the book community often talks about the Global South in general, from a stance that everybody in the Global South is just poor and less fortunate compared to people in the US, the UK, and Canada, and those types of places. So it always seems to forget the people who are immigrants from those other countries who had to move to these countries for better opportunities. It always seems to leave out the people who are in those other countries that are struggling. And just because you are privileged does not mean you can tell somebody else that they are privileged. And I've seen that happen one too many times recently. Just because somebody lives in the US does not necessarily mean they are super privileged. Like, you don't get to determine what makes them privileged because you don't know everybody's living situation. You don't know everybody's struggles. And it's usually the privileged people telling people that they need to acknowledge their privilege. And it's like, worry about you and let those other people worry about them. It also, like, everybody who lives outside of the US, UK, etc. is not poor. So, for example, for the longest time, I had family living outside of the US who did way better living-wise than we were here in the US. Better house, like they traveled a lot, better school, like etc. And even though the money is worth more here, a lot of people in the US have to work 2, sometimes even 3 jobs to make ends meet. Sometimes they're making minimum wage, which is nothing here, and the cost of living is a lot higher. So that never factors into these conversations that kind of just flatten identities on here. Like, yes, there are people who are definitely struggling living outside of the US. However, cost of living is different. The value of the money is different. Just like the overall way of life can be so different. And that's something I've noticed more and more, even in my own family now, especially as an adult. I have family who is living outside of the US. Huge house, lots of land. Like, I've actually learned a lot recently about how much land can be worth in the Caribbean versus here, and how it's valued, and that's been really interesting. So I don't like when people make those generalizations on here, and that happens a lot. Another thing that I saw recently was people misusing the word woke. First of all, the word woke has been an active word since at least the 1930s. Let's stop trying to act like it's brand new. It's only newer to the mainstream. But it was created by African Americans as a way to, like, basically tell you to stay awake. Keep your eyes open to racial discrimination and how we, well, not we, because I'm not African American, how black people in America are treated in comparison to white people. And it's been a word that has been consistently used for decades. And then now people are, if they're not treating it like it's something wrong, they're applying it to their friends when they aren't even from the community themselves. How are you, as a non-Black American, one, using the word woke and then applying it to your white ally friends? Make it make sense, because it's not even a word for you to use, let alone a word for you to use for somebody else. And if you have to, even as a Black person, describe yourself as woke, you really aren't woke. And I think sometimes people take wanting to be an ally and an activist to an extreme where they end up talking over the very people that they are claiming to fight for. And I saw that with the whole Global South thing. I've seen people talk over the people from the Global South in defense of people from the Global South. Make that make sense. And one, it's okay to not jump into every argument on your friends, and I say friends loosely because there are a lot of friendships on here that just aren't real friendships. At the end of the day, you really don't know that person besides what they're showing you as their persona online. And you may talk to them about books here and there, but that doesn't mean you have a full sense of their personality. So sometimes if you have no clue what the argument was about and it didn't involve you directly, you can tap out and stay on the sidelines and maybe vent with said friend later. Because I've seen people jump, like especially on Twitter it'll happen, but it'll be people from here where people will be like, oh, well, I don't know what happened, but I'm on your side. And then that person is completely wrong and they're being victimized as if they're being attacked, and it's just people holding them accountable. So sometimes it's okay to mind your own business. And I saw this come up recently and it kind of confused me. And that's the whole idea of being an expert in racism. What does that even mean? So studying race relations does not necessarily make you an expert. Like, I want to know what we're using as a measurement of the term expert, because there are plenty of people who are writing about race and still racist. Yeah, like you would expect them to know what they're talking about, but they still have no problem stepping over again the very people that they are trying to help. Like old girl who wrote White Fragility and is making more than Black people talking about the same thing and talking over Black people talking about the same thing. Yet in 2020, people were rushing to get that book and use it as a teaching tool. I've said it before and I will say it again. I am not on this platform to teach white people about race. I don't give a damn. I do like to raise awareness in that I like to talk about certain issues that affect my community that are on my mind, but it's not necessarily to raise awareness to people outside of my community. It's just to raise awareness in general, and I usually prefer to have these conversations with people within my community to keep their eyes open. And knowing a lot about a particular topic not only does not make you an expert, it doesn't stop you from making missteps. Just because you are very active within your own community, helping people within your own community, doesn't mean you can't be harmful to people who aren't in your community. Because I've seen that as well. You can have internalized hatred to people outside of your community, and maybe you're not at the stage yet where you really where you're really able to acknowledge that or put that into the correct words. And I'm not condemning you completely for it, but I'm saying hold yourself accountable to your words and actions. And ask yourself why you feel the need to really punch down on others to make your points. Ask yourself why you feel the need to talk down on other people to make your points. So you don't have to march in the protests. If you can't go out and actively work in the community, that's a-okay. There are things that you can do to show, not necessarily your allyship, but to show that you are aware and you are willing to listen. Listening is definitely the most important thing, because most of the time that's all people ask, is just for you to hear them, just for you to listen to their experiences and do what you can to uplift them. Sometimes uplifting another community is as easy as just retweeting something from somebody within that community, especially when people are begging you to share and raise awareness. That's something I don't understand either. There are a lot of people who, and of course your channel, your platform is your own, but it's very interesting when people will jump on here to participate in various readathons for different communities. But when those actual communities are just asking you to hear them and to raise awareness, no, it's going to mess up my beautiful aesthetic feed that is only about books. Or I just want to be quiet and do things in the background. I'm not saying you can't be quiet and do things in the background, but I'm saying, why is it that people are so okay with simply just showing a book with a pretty cover versus sharing the stories of real life people? Like, that book is fictional people. Their problems are they don't really affect anything. These people in real life are actually being affected. And it's also interesting, like, when people have discussions or panels and they invite questionable people as representatives. I've seen that happen one too many times, like, especially with Black romance. Like, so you want to do something to raise awareness for Black romance. Why are you inviting people who don't read Black romance while trying to do something to raise awareness for Black romance? And it's very easy to see on here who reads what, because people are making monthly videos about the types of books they read. People are sharing their Goodreads links where we can see the types of books they read. So why would you invite somebody who does not read a specific type of book on a general basis to then speak on their favorite books, to share in their own experiences, and that's not really their experience? It just never makes sense, and it feels like intentionally trying to hurt the communities that you're trying to help, and that's just not okay. Even outside of a Black romance, I've seen that in Black books in general. I'm like, well, that person is not known for reading Black books, and then they only read a handful of popular ones that everybody else is reading. So why are you inviting them and using your platform where you can invite anybody to come on? Why are you specifically bringing on that person who doesn't read, so that they can then share the same recs that everybody else already knows and has already read on here, and that they can say nothing new when you see so many other people on here who are reading different types of stories, who are also from that community, and can share something new. Make it make sense. And I think in general, there are so many communities that we ignore. Myself, I'm not perfect, and there are definitely a lot of communities I ignore, and I'm learning to just share the experiences of my mutuals, share when they are sharing links, to use my platform when I can to uplift their voice, take their recommendations. If somebody is telling you, and they're from a specific community, that they did not like a book, don't question them for why they didn't like a book if their points are specifically in regards to how the characters from their community were portrayed, because you who are not from that community do not know better than them. And it's very interesting how we'll read, there's so many diverse books that get pushed on here where that people will be raving about, but it's like they never actually examine them beyond the surface level because they just went in to learn. And a lot of people will miss the little problems that people within the actual community will catch. Like, and I've seen this, like, for example, with some of the African-inspired fantasies. I don't know Yoruba, so I can go into a fantasy and love it, but then I want to also check in with that community and see what they're saying about it and just bring attention to that. Like, it happened earlier this year with the book I was reading. I read the reviews, and the review was bad because they said all the language was mostly wrong, it didn't make sense. There were some harmful things that were portrayed about the gods in the stories that are things that people constantly misrepresent that are then harmful to the people in real life. And Britt Riderly had talked a little bit about it when she was talking about her own publishing journey, where she mentioned religion and how, and it's been a conversation I've had with a couple of different people from various communities where, setting aside Christianity, people will look, publishing is exotifying other religions, and they are telling people to use those elements to create fantasies. But that stuff is not fantasy to the real life practitioners. So it's a little bit of a sticky situation when it's used as the basis for fantasy. But that's what people actually believe in. It's not fantasy to them. And you're twisting and misconstruing things in a way that would never happen to Christianity, because Christian people will get on that ass and will tell you wrong. And then when people from those communities speak out and are like, you're misrepresenting my community, then people outside that community want to talk over them. And not just people from the diaspora of that community, but people who have no connection to that community at all will try to jump in defense, and that's just not their place to jump in. So if you take away anything from that video, it's just this video today, it's just to stop and listen. Stop, listen, and elevate when you can. So if you like this video, make sure and hit that like button. Thanks so much for watching, and I will check in with you guys soon. Bye now.